This week, President Trump has essentially taken control of Washington, D.C.'s law enforcement, activating the National Guard, the FBI, DHS, and ICE in what he calls an effort to crack down on crime in the city. Trump was able to so easily commandeer Washington, D.C. because it has no governor nor formal congressional representation to put a stop to it. And so this has reignited the conversation around D.C. statehood. The District of Columbia was established by the Constitution, carved out of Maryland and Virginia as an explicitly neutral site to conduct government business that would not be part of or beholden to any one state. Residents of D.C. have never had voting representation in Congress. They instead elect one non-voting delegate to the House who has floor and committee privileges but cannot vote on final legislation. They also elect one shadow representative and two shadow senators who don't actually have any role in Congress at all. They work more as advocates for D.C. residents and for statehood. Residents can vote for a mayor and other city officials, but that wasn't always the case. In the city's early years, the mayor was appointed by the president. In 1820, Congress amended D.C.'s charter to allow white male landowners to vote for the city's mayor. In 1848, that right was extended to include all white men. In 1867, during Reconstruction, it was extended to black men in D.C. In 1871, though amid a debt crisis in D.C., President Ulysses Grant signed a bill that restructured the city's government around a governor and legislative council that was appointed by the president. In 1874, Congress created a new system where the city would be run by three presidentially appointed commissioners. This was meant to be temporary, but it was made permanent in 1878. D.C. residents were not given the right to vote in presidential elections until 1961, with the ratification of the 23rd Amendment to the Constitution. And in 1973, President Richard Nixon signed the Home Rule Act, a law allowing D.C. residents to elect their own city government for the first time in a century. But to this day, the city remains heavily federalized. Judges and the U.S. attorney, the city's chief prosecutor, are federally appointed. The city's laws and budget are subject to congressional approval. And bringing us to our current situation, the National Guard can be deployed and D.C. Metro Police can be brought under federal control without the local government's approval. D.C. residents have advocated for statehood for decades, but it's been, and by the way, it's been up for debate with Puerto Rico as well, but there's another complicated history at play there. Legislation to make D.C. the 51st state first went up for a House vote in 1993. It lost handily. In June of 2020, the House again voted following the Trump administration's deployment of the National Guard to respond to Black Lives Matter protests. It passed in the democratically controlled House, but was not brought to a vote by the Republican-led Senate. The bill passed in the House again in April of 2021, once again failed to make it to a Senate vote. Now, if D.C. were to become a state, it would have two senators and one at-large representative in the House. By geographic area, D.C. would be the smallest state by far. However, its population is larger than that of Vermont or Wyoming, and not far off from that of Alaska. D.C. residents pay the highest per capita federal taxes in the country and more taxes in total than residents of 22 other states. It's true that given the current political leanings of the city, D.C. statehood would all but guarantee two more Democratic senators and one more Democratic member to the House, which is why Republicans are so dead set against it. But right now, as Donald Trump floods the streets of D.C. with troops, we're seeing the consequences of allowing a city of more than 700,000 people, bigger than Boston, Detroit, or Atlanta, be deprived of the basic rights of self-governance and political representation that most of us take for granted. For more on this, I'm joined now by Monica Hopkins, Executive Director of the ACLU of the District of Columbia. Monica, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. I've tried to set out here that it is a bit complicated, but for Donald Trump, who's been eyeing federalizing lots of things and places around this country, D.C. is, for lots of historical and legislative reasons, low-hanging fruit.
Absolutely. The president can do to D.C. What he has attempted to do in other cities. There's no recourse. We don't have a governor that can challenge the use of federal officers. And he is granted that authority, but in a limited way.
So when I talk about some of the reasons why D.C. was sort of carved out as a separate thing, may have made a lot of sense back in the day when it happened, are any of those reasons still valid? Are there reasons why D.C. should be different than other places? And I only say that because every other national capital in the world, the residents of those cities enjoy the same rights and freedoms that every other resident of every other city in those countries enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of comical that in America, where we call ourselves a representative democracy, we are the only capital city where the residents of that city cannot vote in their representative democracy. There is no reason to not give statehood to the residents of DC, to make DC a state. People will argue it's not constitutional. That is not correct. They will argue that, it is the seat of the federal government, so it is all supposed to be federal. That is not correct. And there are issues that we addressed in the bills to make DC a state, the Admissions Act that was introduced earlier.
Is this an entirely political conversation? In other words, I know you think about it as a lawyer and at the ACLU. You seem to have outlined that there's no actual legal impediment to D.C. becoming a state. So is this all politics at this point?
It is all politics at this point. You mentioned at the top, DC is a highly democratic jurisdiction, but we are interested here in the right to vote in our country, the right to have our voices heard in this country. And as someone who moved to the District of Columbia from Idaho, folks would not say that Idaho is the bluest state in the nation. Things change politically. People forget that the great Frank Church came from Idaho,
Right.
a solid Democrat. So to say that DC can't be a state is a political statement.
What Donald Trump is doing right now with the 30-day federalization of the D.C. Metro Police apparently is allowed under the 1973 Home Rule Act. It's never been used before. Can you tell me a bit about this?
Yeah, so Section 740 of the Home Rule Act allows the president in emergency circumstances to control the Metropolitan Police Department or seek the services of the Metropolitan Police Department for a limited period of time. That period of time is 48 hours. And then if he would like to use them longer, he has to notify Congress, and Congress can basically give him 30 days through that notification. Beyond that, he actually has to seek the permission of Congress to extend that federalization of our Metropolitan Police Force.
What happened yesterday where the Trump administration walked back their essential replacement of the police commissioner? So now the actual police commissioner is back to being the police commissioner, and this person that the Trump administration wanted to put in is a liaison between the Department of Justice and D.C.?
It was more than a liaison. So what happened was the president, Pam Bondi, directed the DEA director to take control of the Metropolitan Police Department, to direct the Metropolitan Police Department, which meant that under this order, the chief of police and also line officers, supervisors would not be able to give any directives to the Metropolitan Police Department without going through the Trump administration. This was sort of a brazen abuse of power and overstep. And yesterday, through a temporary restraining order, after they were sued by the DCAG, that power has been now returned to the mayor and the chief of police.